Today, I will be walking you through how I decorated this sweet summer pineapple and watermelon cookie platter set. If you haven't seen the first two videos in this series, which cover baking the caramel cookies and preparing the icing, the links are in the description below. Now, let's get to the icing. For most of this video, I have sped up the icing of the cookies so as to not visually bore you to death. However, for this first one, I wanted to show you in real time just how long it really takes when you're pretty new to decorating. Now, a pro would probably knock out what I do in this cookie in half the time or less than it takes me. Even with cutting out all of the extra gaps where I wasn't actually decorating, this cookie took me over 3 minutes. So don't get discouraged if it seems to take forever for you to decorate your cookies, or if you can't work quick enough to settle your icing before it starts to dry up on you. I still have these issues, but practice makes progress. I am using a 1 consistency outline and flood for all of the cookies today. This was the first cookie that I decorated, and pretty quickly here, I can tell that my yellow icing is a bit too thick. I just could not get my icing to settle nicely using my scribe, so I had to resort to picking up the cookie and shaking it. While I don't mind doing this, I don't love it for the video. Either I have to show the shaking, which honestly doesn't appeal to me visually, or I have to cut to the magical, perfectly settled, flooded cookie. I am trying to imitate the original designer's look of this cookie, minus the little face. It's cute, but not really my style for this kind of cookie. What I'm doing here is called wet on wet. Using more than one color of flood icing at about the same consistency, I place these lines of icing onto the still wet surface of the yellow. With wet on wet, you have to work fairly quickly because you don't want your surface icing to start to dry before you finish applying the additional icing, as it can possibly not settle fully into the first layer of icing, or it doesn't move nicely when you use your scribe on it. You would think that all of the carnivorous plants cameraman has around here would encourage bugs to stay away. Though they definitely capture and digest bugs for food, they are not pest control. Darn it. What you see here are called nepenthes, or you may know them by their common name, tropical pitcher plant. Oh, yes, cookies. So you may be able to tell here that the brown icing I used here isn't quite settling down into the yellow icing nicely. And because of that, I didn't even try to work the ends of those lines with my scribe. Turns out both my yellow and my brown were too thick. Now in the past, I've just decided to work through it and continue on with the substandard icing consistency, which only resulted in massive frustration. But today, I did something different. I got my fanny up, pulled my icing out of the bag, added a little water, and rebagged it. It took me all of about 5 minutes. Why, oh why, have I not just done that before? This green icing, however, is perfect. I had 0 issues with it. I was able to use my scribe to get it to settle quite nicely. I'm not entirely sure how I feel about the shape of the top of this pineapple. I didn't follow the shape of the cookie, so you see a bit of exposed cookie underneath. But I think I like the sharpness of the leaves a bit more the way I did it. Also, I opted to not do the second layer of leaves that would have required me to allow the icing to crust over for about 15 minutes in my dehydrator first. And it's about as good as it's gonna get. I noticed a few crumbs, which probably doesn't make for a nice viewing experience, so off they go. Now we are cruising along at 3 times the speed. You may notice that my icing is flowing out of the bag nicer and seems more fluffy, and it's settling on its own much easier. I didn't even need to pick up the cookie and shake it. I would like to get a little better at following the shape of the cookie. I have heard from a few different people that icing a circle shape is more difficult than most other shapes. I'm starting to believe it. Also notice that my brown lines are settling down into the yellow a bit better. Now, one thing I didn't do on the first cookie was these little green dots. I looked at the cookies and thought, something is missing. Maybe because Semi-Sweet made a little face on theirs, it looked complete. Did you know that pineapples are considered a type of berry? Each one of the sections forms an individual flower and then they all merge together. So that's what I'm trying to mimic here. I love fresh pineapple, but my favorite summer fruit is a perfectly ripe peach or nectarine, whichever one I can get my hands on. I do notice nectarines these days, at least in California, tend to have a stronger flavor than peaches, so I usually opt for those first. Let me know in the comments what your favorite summer fruit is. It can get a little tiresome just doing the same thing over and over, especially if you're not doing it for any reason other than to practice. So after I made, I believe, 10 of the regular pineapples, I decided to change things up. I'm still practicing, but this just makes it a little more fun for me. After all, it takes something like 10,000 hours to become a master at a task, right? That means a lot of icing and a lot of videos. Boring would not encourage me to move forward. And who says you can't have a green pineapple anyway? We can probably just call this the unripened pineapple. You probably wouldn't want to eat it though. Might be a bit on the sour side. I kind of like the look of the colors this way. I think it's because the darker color appears to be underneath and the lighter color on top, which in all truth is how it was applied. But the colors have fully melted together. Though if you break open the cookie, you will actually see the color doesn't sink all the way down. I need to remember to show you that in a future video. One more pineapple with another color change, and then onto our watermelons. Not sure I like the brown as a base color here. You probably have noticed I've been having a little trouble applying the lines nicely. When you see breaks in the lines, that is caused by my not applying enough pressure for the speed that I'm moving my piping bag. So here, it's not enough pressure while moving too fast. Also, you see I have globs on either end of almost every line. A glob at the start of the line means I had a little icing on the tip of my bag to start with, and at the end, because I had too much icing coming out when I finished my line. Some of this has to do with the consistency. Not that the consistency is wrong for this application, but more so that my inexperience causes me to not exactly know how to deal with this issue. I didn't mention this before, but you probably noticed that some of the cookies had marks on them. I am using an edible marker. It doesn't really matter what color you use. Just make sure you don't mark all the way to the edge of your cookie, or you might not be able to cover up all of the marker. My red icing is also the perfect consistency. Thankfully, I didn't have to rebag any more of my icing. I think this red came out really nice. I think it screams watermelon. With my 2 layers of green, I'm trying to represent the watermelon rind. I needed to use my scribe to get the edges that meet each layer to sit flush. This darker green is the same green I used on the pineapples. I think it brings a bit of cohesion to the set. Right now, this looks more like a funny colored candy corn than it does a watermelon slice. It needs something else. This will not be a seedless watermelon. I wasn't trying to be careful to make perfectly round dots because I needed to use my scribe to pull the icing a bit to make them more seed-shaped anyway. I'm pushing my scribe only a little into the surface of the icing, careful not to touch the cookie. I see a little bit of cratering in the green of the fully dried cookie, but that's okay today. Back to playing around with the colors. So the little pink edible marker I used came with my order of Chewa cookie baking mats. I love these mats. They seem to make the cookie chewier or softer somehow, and they leave this little grid pattern on the back side, which makes the eating experience so much more enjoyable. The meat of this one looks a little more like a honeydew. I cannot get on board with honeydew. Not a fan. I am a self-admitted food player, which means I literally pick up and pull my food apart if it's possible. And I am what I call a texture person. I notice in talking to people that most people are either taste people or texture people. Have you ever thought about that? In case you're wondering what I mean by that, well, for me, I can eat something that tastes okay, but if the texture is perfect, I think it's amazing. For me, an example of that would be mango. Even if a mango is perfectly ripe, I think it still kind of tastes like pine trees. And I'm not a fan of the smell of pine trees, so the taste of what I think pine trees taste like doesn't appeal to me. But the texture is like placing silk on my tongue and is so pleasant. I still eat mango. Conversely, if I eat something where the taste is awesome, but the texture is off, I can't eat it at all. I can't think of an example for that one, but these cookies are the perfect blend of both, super tasty and super textury. We are now at 8 times speed. I already hate this cookie. So far, it looks like an overly yellow corn chip. My icing is dripping off the edge a little bit, so to fix this, I just take my scribe and scrape up against the cookie to remove the extra icing. It does leave a little bit of a rough edge on the icing, but it doesn't look too bad. This now looks more like a pineapple slice that is crying tears of tar. Cheese pizza with funky shaped olives? I don't think I have anything nice to say about this one, except that it was delicious. Now for the centerpiece of this sweet summer fruit platter. So I totally forgot that I needed to do this cookie until after I cleaned everything up and it was late. So this was actually done the next day. I left my icing out on the counter and didn't rebag it or anything. I didn't notice much separation of color in the bag, so I just needed the icing in the bag for a few seconds and we were good to go. So it is no secret that I have spent a grand total of 0 minutes actually working on improving my writing on my cookies. I've written on cookies, but they always look awful. And today is no exception. I'm much more interested in getting the basics down well before I spend any time improving my writing. Overall, I like the look of the completed set together. Everyone I gave them to loved them.
Next time on Kuny's Cookie Chronicles.
You've ever heard that if you use leftover royal icing from your freezer, you have to freshen up the icing with a bit of newly made icing or it won't work right? I have. And for a while, it kind of stressed me out. I mean, if you have to make new icing every time you want to ice your cookies, you would end up with so much extra white icing, you wouldn't know what to do with it. So today, I'm going to prepare for my pink princess cookie using only leftover icing, and then I'll show you how I decorate it and the final result.